Okay, we've spent a little bit of time talking about how to graph, aka solve these equations with two variables. If we have different bits of information, if we have the equation, or if we have a couple of points, or if we have a slope and a point, we can graph them. Well, now, what if we don't have the equation and we need to know the equation instead of or along with the graph? So here's the different forms of our linear equations. This one we know, y equals mx plus b. Remember, m is always the slope, and this b is the y-intercept, right? 0b. And here's what it looks like, okay, with numbers in there. So those we know. Now, what if we have one like this? This is called the point slope form because, again, we have the slope. But this time, the point we have is just any other point on the line. It's not the y-intercept, it's some other point. And this x sub 1, y sub 1 is the x-coordinate and the y-coordinate of the point. Okay, here's an example of what it might look like with numbers in it. Standard form looks like this. We've seen that also. The difference in standard form and just a regular equation with x and y on the same side is that we can't have any fractions over here. And this coefficient of this x variable has to be positive, right? So it would look like that. If we're graphing it, we know that's perfect for the intercept method. So that's standard form. And then we have these two, the vertical line and horizontal line, which we've talked about. These are our special ones where all we have is an x and a y, and the slope is undefined on this one, and the slope is 0 for this one. Okay. So basically, what I need, other than I need to recognize if we have just one letter, one x or one y, everything else is numbers. K here is standing for a constant, right? Just a number. Okay, then those are special, and we'll deal with those separately like we do with the slope and the graph. Okay, but basically, here's my two forms that I'm interested in. And once again, I got to know these formula, right? Got to know them along with the formula for slope. To write the equation of a line, I have to have a point and a slope. Notice there's an M in both of these. I have to have a point and a slope, a point and a slope. Now, if that point is the y-intercept, oh, buddy, I'm set. Okay? If it's not the y-intercept, I can still get there. So let's look at how we would write the equations of lines given various pieces of information. If your slope is -5 and the y-intercept is 0, 6, oh, well, I've got the slope and the y-intercept, and I have memorized this formula. So all I have to do is plug the slope in right here, right? And the y-intercept, that number, that non-zero number, in right there. So y equals -5x plus 6, and I'm done. Okay. If the equations ask you, or the problem asks you to write it in standard form, that's the only thing that's useful for. I'm not ever going to plug into the standard form, but if it asks me to leave it in standard form, I just add 5x to both sides. So standard form of this would look like this. I just need my x and y on the same side. And I don't have any fractions, and that has to be positive. So I'm not really ever using it to get the equation. I just, sometimes they'll ask me to leave it in that form, right? They just think it looks nicer. Okay, so now we've got an undefined slope. Oh, as soon as I hear undefined slope or zero slope, I think special, special. And then I forget all this. I forget about all these equations. I'm thinking special, special. That means it's either like this or like this. My line, I mean. And this is the one that's undefined. That's 0. It's not sloping at all. It's perfectly flat. So I just had to figure out which one goes with this. So imagine drawing an axis on here. And this is x, and this is y, and this line is going through x. So its equation is x undefined slope. This is an error here, okay? Because with an undefined slope, my equation has to be x equals a number, and I do not have a y-intercept. Okay, so I'm sorry about this, guys. The y-intercept is right there. Okay, this is not going to be on this line. So let's just forget about that. Whoops, sorry. That's saying that's the y-intercept. And we'll say it goes through the x point. X equals 0. Oh, let me take that back because I thought I was drawing it through the -2. Okay. All right. Let's start this whole thing over because I don't want to confuse you. All right. So let's go back to the beginning where as soon as it says undefined slope, okay, then I know it's either a line like this or like this. And with a little bit of thought, I know it's this one because this has a 0 slope. So I need to figure out which direction this goes on a coordinate grid. If I drew a coordinate in there, I would figure out that this crosses over x. So my equation is going to be x equals the x number. Okay, so it is going to go through where x is 0, but that's over here. I confused myself I'm not sure why I confused myself, but I did. Okay, and so it will go through this point, 0, -2. Sorry about that. Okay, we'll go back and do another one of these at the end. Okay, here's one that says the slope is 2 and it goes through this point. Okay, so I have to have a slope and a point unless it's special, right? I have to have a slope and a point. So I have that. If the point's the y-intercept, I'm good. If the point is not the y-intercept, I have to know this formula. Y minus y sub 1 equals m times x minus x sub 1. And I plug into this formula. Okay, so if I'm plugging into this formula, okay, the y sub 1 and the x sub 1 is the y and the x coordinates of the point. So y minus the y part of the point equals m times x minus the x part of the point. Now, there's my equation. I just have to clean it up. We're really interested in always leaving it in this form. Sometimes your homework will ask you to leave it in this form, but I'm interested in solving it for y for the most part. So I'm going to distribute that 2. And I'm going to add 1 to both sides. So y equals 2x minus 7. Now, if it asks me to leave it in standard form, I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides, so I'd have -2x plus y equals -7, but I can't leave a negative in front of the x. So I would divide everything by -1, getting 2x minus y equals +7. Okay, but this is really the one we're interested in for the most part. Your homework might occasionally ask you about that. Okay, and then what if I needed to write the equation of a line that goes through these 2 points? I need to know if it says write an equation, I need a point and a slope, a point and a slope. Uh-oh, I don't have a slope. Oh, but I have 2 points. I can find the slope. So first of all, I need to know my formula for slope. Y's over x's, right? Rise, y's, rise over run. So let's plug that in. -4 minus -1. X is 3 minus -2. Let's get rid of those double signs. -4 plus 1, 3 plus 2, so -3/5. Okay. Now I have a slope and a couple of choices for points. Okay, I'm going to use the one with least negatives. You might prefer smaller numbers. I'd like to have no negatives. That's usually where we make mistakes. But I'm using this same formula, point slope formula again, because I have a point and a slope. And I could use either point, whichever you think makes your math easier. Y minus the y part of the point equals m times x minus the x part of the point. Okay, now in this one, I have a fraction. So remember, if we're solving an equation, first step, get rid of fractions, okay? I'm also going to get rid of these stupid double signs as I rewrite it, but I've got to multiply everything by 5, not inside parentheses. Okay, so that gives me 5y, and this becomes a plus 4. So 4 times 5 is plus 20. Okay, that cancels. So it's negative 3 only times x minus 3. Now get rid of parentheses. I got rid of fractions. Let's get rid of parentheses. Okay, and solve it for y, or depending on what it asks for, but I'm going to solve it for y. So I'm going to subtract 20 from both sides. 5y equals negative 3x minus 11, and divide by 5 to get that y all by itself. So y equals negative 3/5 x minus 11/5. Okay, let's go back up and let's say we had an equation with slope is 0 and it goes through the point 2, 5. Okay, as soon as I see that, oh, it's special. So I know it's either an equation, a line that goes this way or this way, right? Let's imagine putting it on a grid, and this is the 0 slope. So it's going through y. So the letter, the variable that goes with a 0 slope is the y. So y equals 5 is my equation, right? And even though I inadvertently just drew that down here, you know, it would really, if I were graphing it, it'd be up here going through positive 5. But this was just to get my bearings on, you know, until I can look at it and know. But if I need to, I say, okay, I know it's one of these. Let's figure out which one. This is the 0, so which variable goes with the horizontal? Oh, that's the one that crosses through the tick mark of the y's. Okay. All right. If that was too confusing, let me know.